Today is June 10th, 2012, and we've come together to celebrate and continue a journey that our father, John Christopher Neergaard, also known as Jack, started many, many years ago. And it's a journey about our family history. And we're going to go back and look at his father, John Henry Neergaard, also known as Pop, and his mother, Christine Columbia Ashenfelter, also called lovingly Mom. And we're going to look at their parents as well as their grandparents and many of the family history that we know and love. And Jackie's going to share a few of Dad's passions and why we're doing this video.
Well, I think probably 4 of the greatest passions that Dad had was for his family, for history, for his faith in God, and his coin collecting. And in his coin collecting, you will see all of those passions played out before you. We've brought several of his pieces together to share with the rest of our family. And we thought that this would be a good way to where you guys would be able to see what Dad has collected and what was so passionate to him. So we're going to start with this set, which is Dad's set, his birth year. Many family members, even friends, people he worked with, were fortunate enough to receive a set like this. And usually he'll have where the coins of that year will be placed in the folder. And in this particular plaque is Dad's, born February 16th, 1932. It's Dad when he was a little guy. And here's a copper penny that year, a quarter, and a $10 gold coin. Those were the only 3 coins that came out in 1932. And the gold coin Dad was especially proud of. He acquired the last few years and had that placed in his set. In most of the sets, there is a story, something either memorable to him, or a story about the coins, or a story about the event that happened in the year. In this particular one on his set, the 25-cent coin was in honor of the bicentennial of George Washington's birth in 1732, which would be 200 years before Dad, born in 1932. Now, Dad's passion started, and Karen is going to share where the passion of coin collecting started for Dad.
And Dad's passion for coin collecting began with his mother, Christine, lovingly known as Mom. She collected Morgan dollars because they were circulated in her younger years. And throughout the years, when she would go to Rhodes department store, she would, when she would get a silver dollar, she would tuck it away in her purse and save it in her drawer. And she began collecting them, and my father took note of that. And he loved history, so throughout the displaying of these coins, we will see that he relates the dates with family, special times in history, and everything. But it started with a simple Morgan silver dollar that his mom collected. And she was born in 1893.
So next in our journey, we're going to talk about Dad's grandparents, who were Richard Neergaard and Marietta Johnson. They were both born in 1862 and 1863. Richard Neergaard was born September 7th of 1862, and Marietta Johnson was born March 23rd of 1863.
This plaque represents the 130th anniversary of the marriage of Lydia and Harry. They are the mother of Christine and Christine's father, the 1876 centennial. It also, on the back, he has his little Indian pictorial on there for Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho. victory over the U.S. troops June 25th, 1878 at the Little Bighorn, Dakota Territory, which was another deep passion of my father's in the Native American Indians. This plaque represents my father's grandparents, Richard and Mary Etta Neergaard, their 50th wedding anniversary. And he states in here that there is a copy of the rare 1885 trade dollar. And also it has another very special meaning which Teresa is going to share with you.
His grandparents were married in December of 1885, and my husband and I met in October and went to my parents' house over Thanksgiving the following month after we had met, and we were in love and ready to get married, and my husband asked if we could just get married in December, and I said, well, if my parents say it's okay, well then it's okay with me. And when we went back home, my dad, when I asked him, how would you feel about a December wedding? He got so excited and said, December is when my grandparents got married right before Christmas on Christmas Eve, and it would be just a joy if you got married in December. And that was a real blessing to me. Just so you can see, is a family portrait. 50th anniversary party, Grandview, 1935. Next, we'd like to share a little bit about the white side of the family, which is on the Aschenfelder side, which is mom's relatives. And this is in memory of Captain Thomas White, and that was a relative, of course, of John Quincy White. Captain White was born March 17th of 1754. And here's another coin set in honor of him. He was a military man, as you can tell, with the title of captain, and Dad was very, very respectful and just cared deeply for those who served in the military. On the back, again, there's a story, and it says about this set, 1754 to 1976. This coin set honors the White family. Thomas Sr. was born in 1754. His grandson, John Q. White, was born in 1828. His daughter Lydia married Harry C. Aschenfelder in 1876. Their daughter became Mrs. John Neergaard, and her son and his wife had a daughter who was born in 1954. She had a daughter who was born this year of 1976. This set contains a 1797.5 cent and 3 large cents, 1794 and 1801. Thomas Jr. was 1 year old. And in 1839, the year Thomas Sr. died. The remaining coin medals are all from this bicentennial year. Our family.
In 1852, John Quincy White married Abigail Ann Friedenberg. He was a corporal in the Civil War Centennial. Born 1828 in Columbia, Ohio, enlisted in the Union Army in 1862. He has coins from 1862 through 1865, the 2002 coin, and coins through 1961 through 1965. This is also a plaque with John Quincy White, 1864. In his uniform, a very famous picture in our family that we treasure deeply and honor. This is the 170th anniversary of his birth, done in 1998. And this plaque represents a man, kind of a mystery man. Actually was one of my dad's heroes as a young boy, and where my dad kind of found a love for cowboys in knowing that he had an Uncle Joe that did cattle drives. Actually, 1 year never returned from a cattle drive, and his mother actually hired the Pinkerton detectives, and you may want to look up what they did, but they were pretty famous detectives back in those days, to try to find him, but he was never found. And my dad always felt that my son, Dustin, the third to the oldest son of mine, his middle name is Joseph, who I originally named after Joseph, the father of Jesus, but come to feel very excited that I had an Uncle Joe, and so he also kind of shared that with Joseph. And I will read on the back, because he was a special uncle to my dad. Uncle Joe, as my mother called him, is a legend in our family history. He was my mother's brother, 3 years older than she. As a young man in 1870s, he brought cattle into South Texas and Colorado and brought them from north to Chicago for resale. On his last trip, which was from the Colorado, he disappeared sometime after the turn of the century. Until her death in 1931, his sister, my grandmother, had detectives searching for him, sometimes using the famous Pinkerton detectives. It was generally thought at the time that his men had killed him and buried him en route and divided his cattle. He did go as far as Calgary in the 1870s, as noticed by the 1975 Canadian dollar with the cowboy on it. My mother's memory of him was that he was quite tall, good-looking, and always dressed like the cowboy he truly was. She remembers at his baby sister Bertie's wedding, he was convinced to wear a tuxedo, but my mother, being small, noticed he had on dusty, high-heeled cowboy boots.
Dad's mother, Mom, she had 4 sisters. The oldest one is here. This is Rosamond Delilah Bertie, they called her. And she was the oldest, and she was referred to as Mom's second mom, because Mom's father passed away when Mom was, I believe, just being born. I think her mother was pregnant with her. She was just a young girl. And so Bertie helped Sunshine, Mom's mom, do a lot of raising of the girls. And here's a picture of the 4 girls. And we have Mabel Ann, which she was called Annie. And here is a plaque of Mabel Ann. She was a professor at Davis College. And I'm named after Mabel Ann. That's where I got my middle name. So Mabel Ann, and they had Bertie in the middle. And then over here we have, they call Mary Elizabeth, but they called her Mamie. And then Christine Columbia, which she was called Chrissy there. And these were the four Ashenfelder girls, which would be 3 of them, Dad's aunts.
And one thing that is very special about my father's grandmother and them calling her Sunshine is my mother would always wake me up saying, "Good morning, Sunshine." And when I heard that my great-grandmother, I guess it would be, was nicknamed Sunshine, I just felt really special. And I also wake my girls up sometimes and call them Sunshine. So it's kind of a little legacy for our family.
So here are 3 sets that Dad made, mostly finished, but anyway, they're of his mother, Mom Neergaard, Christine Columbia Ashenfelder, she was born September 22nd, 1893. You'll find many Morgan dollars throughout his whole collection, and silver dollars, because Dad carried it right on in to when the Morgan dollars were no longer in circulation. Then he began with the silver dollars and the Eisenhower dollars. But what was real significant is the Morgan dollar, the 1893 Morgan dollar. Every coin is minted with either where they're minted, and so it's either San Francisco, Carson City, Denver, Philadelphia, But the 1893 Morgan dollar has a real significant, very limited amount of stamp in San Francisco Mint. And so Dad did not have one of those, but he was able to acquire the one with the CC, the Carson City, and he was very proud of that. So he has on here Mom's Own Carson City Mint Morgan dollar. Chicago World's Fair Columbian coinage.
And there's a picture of his mom
And Dad.
and Dad.
Pop was born July 12th, 1894. This is Pop as a little man right there. Must have been probably about 2 years old, would be my guess. And here he is in 1920. Pop was a judge, and he was a very respected man in the community and among the family. Unfortunately, he left life younger than we wished, but he was a very, very good man.
Pop died a year before I was born, so I never actually met him, but only heard of him through the stories that Dad would share of the history of his father. And one of the things that Dad often shared was that he was a very respected, very fair judge, and oftentimes when he would give a sentence that the person would be convicted, he hoped that that sentence would actually cause them to make a change in their lives, because his goal was always to help those in need of help and see them come out a different person.
I have here Mom and Pop, who are our fathers, father and mother. It's a darling picture. In June 1st, 1919. That was their wedding year and their wedding day. And I just want to share a little bit myself about Pop, which I didn't know him real well. I remember him, but I remember him in the later years of his life when he had lost both of his legs to diabetes. But I remember my dad speaking. I would ask him, well, what was he like? And he would always tell me, and so these are the words that always stick in my mind about Pop, that he was a very quiet, gentle man. And that just touches my heart, because when I picture him in my mind, I think of him as someone I could have really, really gotten close to, and that he had just a very gentle spirit. My dad said he never heard him yell or real angry, so that was just a beautiful way to remember him.
We've been covering Dad's side of the family, and what's so beautiful about Dad is not only did he love history about his family, but he loved history about family, period. And so this next coin set that we're talking about, and the coin sets to follow, are talking about, this represents the Ashenfelters, the Neergaards, but also the Nevas and the Dipbenners and their marriages and their families. So Jackie will be sharing about Mom's side of the family.
This is the centennial plaque that Dad put together for the Nevas and the Dipbenners' arrival in America. And the Nevas and Dipbenners are our mother's father, which is the Neva, and our mother's mother, which is the Dipbenners. And you're going to hear more about Tom and Hazel as we go along. But this is a centennial plaque, and I'm going to read you just briefly what this is about. The Nevas and Dipbenners began to arrive in the Dakotas between the very last of the 1860s and 1870s and the first of the 1980s. Marcella's grandparents were born in the 1880s in North Dakota. In 1960, she and our two girls, Karen and Jackie, at that time, went to North Dakota for her Uncle Roman's 25th anniversary of being a priest. She saw her living grandmother Dipbenner for the last time, and they visited the statue of the world's largest buffalo in Dakota. Our great-grandfather, which is Grandpa Neva's dad, Andrew Neva. The 1907 is the birth of one of Andrew's sons, which is Thomas Neva, which is our grandfather, our mother's father. This is our great-grandmother, Jennifer Neva. And Jennifer, when I talked earlier, when we first started, we talked about Dad's passions, and one of his passions is his faith in God. And it goes way back. And it probably starts a lot with Jenny. And I'll read a little something that Dad wrote here. He said, "The United Nation coin below, declaring the 1980s as a decade for women, is for two women born in 1884, who are great women to me of that century. One a saint, I believe, as Grandma Neva, who prayed for us. The other, Eleanor Roosevelt, who's on the other side, who he esteemed much. And she was the first lady of Adlai Stevenson when she died in 62. Grandma Neva died 7 years earlier in 1955, and he says that I am in the church and the faith because of her prayers."
Just a few thoughts about Jenny Neva. Probably 2 years before Dad passed away, he shared a story with me that I had never heard before, and a great story about Christ in our family. Jenny had a prayer closet, and she would go and she would pray for hours and hours for those suffering, and she would even pray that she herself would suffer to the point of their suffering so that she could pray for them in a way that was straight from the heart. And that really touched my soul deeply, and to show that heritage.
This plaque here represents the 50th anniversary in 1903 to 1953. And this here is our grandfathers, our mother's grandparents, Andrew and Jenny Neva. And this here is our mother's grandparents, also William and Laura Dittbenner.
The plaque I hold here is a plaque that commemorates or honors William and Laura Dittbenner. This is the centennial of the birth. Hazel, who is our mother's mother, our grandmother, with her father, which is, I'm pretty sure, a rare picture in the family, so very special. Here is a picture also with Hazel, our grandmother, with her mother, Laura, and very sweet. And I will kind of read on the back here. Hazel Elsie Dittbenner was born January 24th, 1910. She had two sisters pictured above on the back of this, William, as they called him Bill, and Laura, whose birth this commemorates, were married in 1903. Hazel's birth is remembered by the 1910 $2.50 gold coin. Bill and Laura were born sometime between 1879 and 1884. This is Hazel's birth sets, January 24th, 1910. On the back, it has also the picture of her father and her, William, who married Tom Neva in 1933. My grandmother Hazel and my mother Marcella. This is on the farm in Prosser that this was taken.
And my father had a dear, sweet love for Hazel. He just respected her for the different things that she walked through in her life. Very difficult life on the farm at times, and some difficulties later on in life as well that we'll share.
The coins that are in here are Mom's birth year, 1934. And then the gold piece here that was mounted in a locket is a 1910 gold piece.
Our grandfather, Thomas R. Neva, born in 1907. This set is 1907 to 2007. And he was a very special man to me, always played pool with me and took me to the Catholic Church. And when I was growing up, Hazel and Tom actually were divorced, which was a hardship, but they worked through it, and Hazel always had a great attitude, my grandmother, towards his new wife, which was Ella, who I grew up with. And my dad also loved her equally. And this is a proof set in memory of Ella.
Born in 1916. She was born in Wyoming, from the good old days.
And I kind of grew up with her as my grandmother, in a sense, second grandmother, I should say. And then, of course, from Hazel and Thomas Arneva came our sweet mother and the love of my father's life, as you all know, Marcella Loretta Neergaard, born in 1934, and this is her proof set. And he would always say she was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen.
The birth years of the siblings of our parents, which is Joyce and Tom, and Dad's sisters, Mary and Jill. Dad would do these several different coin sets, sometimes like this, and the reason, these are proof sets, and it was important to him to have the proof set many times in a collection, which would be the coin denominations that came out for that year. This happened to be 1987, and the year our grandmother passed away. What he found interesting was to have the mints, where this is a D for Denver, this is an S for San Francisco, and a P for Philadelphia. 2 silver dollars, the Morgan dollar 1889, and the American Silver Eagle 1999.
In memory of the Dipbenners and the Nevas.
This coin set talks about the arrival of the Neergaards in the 1850s, and the coins represent during those times of the Neergaards' arrival. They arrived from Denmark to the U.S.
These silver dollars were minted in 1904 and 1921. June 9th, 1922, Mary Geneve, Sis, was 2 years old on a trip to St. John, Washington to visit her Uncle Clyde Linville and her Aunt Mame, Elizabeth Mary Ashenfelter. Sis, my father's oldest sister, Mary, and her mother, seated in the back seat, went for this drive with Uncle Clyde in one of his cars from his dealership at St. John's, Washington. And this photo of his sister was taken while on that drive. So this marks a very important time in our history with our family, something we're very proud of. My grandmother, Christine Neergaard, her father was a contractor, and he got the contracting job to build the Denny Hall, which is a big college in Seattle, Washington. And he began building it, and toward the end of toward the completion of the building, sadly there was a fatal accident, and it involved my father's grandfather, Harry. And while he was building this Denny Hall, they had ran out of funds. And he wanted so badly to complete it, and they had the bell tower to complete. And in the completion of the bell tower, one of the workers fell into the vat of tar. My great grandfather pulled him out and fell in himself and was killed. But as the story goes, he actually put in his own money in the completion of Denny Hall. And we're very proud of him and what he did for the college and, and the saving of a man's life, which shows what kind of a man he was. And I think the coin went on to 1997.
Don't know. But that's
No,
okay,
I don't
because we're
think-
going to end
I'm
before
pretty
that.
sure that
Okay.
the Morgan
Very good.
wasn't in 1997.
Thank you.
Okay, today is June 10th, 2012. Sorry.
Well,
Okay.
and the passion.
Wait. Let me.
Are you going in on one person at a time? Just
We're not gonna tape this when you start when I'm done. And then you can say when you go into this. You can say when you go into this.
get the Indians.